Your attention, masters, mistresses. All systems functional for the Everything Geek podcast.
Hey, this is Rich McDonald, and I play Commander David Mason on Call of Duty Black Ops 2. And you're listening to Everything Geek podcast.
It's James Arnold Taylor, the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi and Master Plo Koon in Star Wars The Clone Wars, and you're listening to Everything Geek, the podcast.
Hey, it's Leif Gamfert. I played Uncle Ben's killer in The Amazing Spider-Man, and you're listening to the Everything Geek podcast.
Hello, I'm Simon Fisherbecker. You probably know me better as Dorian Moldavar from Doctor Who, or the Fat Friar from Harry Potter. And this is Everything Geek podcast.
Face it, Tiger. You just hit the jackpot with the Everything Geek podcast.
You're listening to the Everything Geek podcast, bringing you interviews from your favorite films and TV shows every week, and all of the latest news. Here's your host, Ruari Williamson.
Hello everyone, you're listening to the Everything Geek podcast. I'm your host Rory, and joining me today is a very special guest. We have actor Mason Heidger, who is best known for playing Officer Rucka in Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice, Lance Dawson in Monsters on Main Street, Jonas Whalen in Niner, writer in The Fourth Wall, and man on videotape in Some Are Born. Mason, how are you? I'm very well, thank you. It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast today, and on your birthday of all days.
Yeah, definitely, of course.
That's a bit too much of a compliment.
Yeah. Well, I'm moving today, so, much rather be here than moving.
Okay, that's much more understandable, but thank you for the overly kind words.
Yeah.
Yeah. And happy birthday again, of course. So, getting right into my questions for you, Mason. My first question is, how did you decide you wanted to become an actor?
When I was, it's been a long time. I think I was about 3 years old, and I was watching TV, and I guess I kind of just had the thought of who are these people on TV that are entertaining me so at such a young age? And I asked my mom, who are these people? And she told me they're actors. And I think just at that moment, when I was that young, that I just really kind of latched on to that idea of just doing something cool, just like entertaining. And because I loved it, just watching TV, and it was like this entire new world of exploration that I really wanted to try. So since then, really, and then throughout the years growing up, it kind of slowly built up. It wasn't necessarily until high school, really, that I started doing some plays and stuff. Even then, I was so nervous to just get into it. Not necessarily when I was on stage doing musicals or whatever, but just the idea of it, do I really want to go down this path? I don't know if I can do this. And then once you get out there, it's really great and really fun. Yeah, but then it was about 2 years after I graduated high school, and I went to one of these. It was at a hotel where these guys, this I can't even remember what they were called, this thing, and I heard about it on the radio, and they were basically looking for people or actors, I guess. And you go there, and they had this thing going on this was in Michigan, and they had it going on in Chicago, where you basically pay $1,000, and you go and you meet a bunch of agents and managers and all this stuff. But at the time, this was all foreign words to me. I didn't understand anything I was hearing. So I went there, and I'm talking to the guy. I'm like, yeah, I want to do this. To me, I thought, they're looking for the next big thing or something, and and he kind of, he looked at me and he was like, well, do you have any training? Do you have any this? Do you have any that? Anything? Do you have a resume? And I was like, well, no, I don't have any. What are you talking about? And he told me, well, if this is, you're telling me this is what you want to do with your life, then, you should probably do all these things, get training. And that kind of was the spark that I needed to really look into it. And that's when I moved out to New York City and went to an acting school there.
Yeah, that's really interesting,
Yeah.
especially, how you just found it very interesting when you were little watching TV and just, I guess you could say, being enthralled by what you were seeing the actors on screen do, which is a very interesting way to get into it,
Yeah.
Getting interested in that craft.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, growing up and it it was always just kind of fun pretending. I was always pretending um whenever I would like just being alone or something, I would just I was always I was always like an action star or something. And I guess kind of growing up watching like action movies where usually I think the one I feel like a lot would be like Die Hard with a Vengeance. Just he's like this alcoholic and just he's always a mess, but he's such a badass, and he's always doing this stuff. So I would always like kind of I would like pour a little bit of like, this is so embarrassing, but I would pour some like apple juice and like pretend it's like scotch or something, and I would like pretend to like get all drunk or something, and then I would be an action hero.
Well, people have done stranger things,
Yeah.
but yeah, that is pretty funny though.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the only way I could get drunk is if I pretended to be drunk, so I might have to follow your example using apple juice.
Yeah, you'd be surprised
Well,
what the mind
be
can do,
honest, did you ever pretend to be Batman or Superman when you were younger?
What? Yeah, of course. Oh my gosh, definitely. Yeah, I think when I was really young, I had one of those like shirts that had the Superman logo and it had Velcro on the back and you could put like a red cape on, So I was always running around. I think my favorite when I was a kid was Spider-Man actually. Spider-Man. I would always run around and just I love me some
Now the
Spider-Man, that's for
DC
sure.
fans don't like you anymore. Yeah, I'm joking.
Oh, come on,
Spider-Man's
all be
my
friends.
favorite anyway. So you've come to the right podcast.
Nice. There you go. Yeah. Well, Batman is
Okay,
my
yeah.
favorite
Well,
now.
that's understandable for obvious reasons. Yeah, but of course we've got the right topic to talk about, considering Batman is now your favorite superhero. So my next question is, how were you originally cast as Officer Rucka in Batman vs Superman?
So, geez, okay. It's been so many years, I feel like now. Let me think. I think it was 2013. It was about December, I believe. And yeah, because I think we filmed in, yeah. So 2013 December, I remember hearing that people were going on these auditions for uh, SWAT 1, SWAT 2. And I was like, oh man. And everybody was like, yeah, this is totally Batman versus Superman. And was out in Michigan. And it was called Sage and Milo. That was the code name for the movie. And so, like, yeah, we're auditioning for SWAT 1 and SWAT 2 for Sage and Milo. And I was like, oh man, like I want to audition for that. How do I get on there? I want to do that. What do I do? Who do I talk to? And it wasn't until May of 2014, so that's, December to May, that I didn't get a call from my agent in Michigan. And she told me I was going to read for SWAT 1. And I was like, okay, cool. So they sent me the script, the little section, and I learned my part. And then I went into the the audition room and I got in there and she was like, which part are you reading for? And I was like, SWAT 1. She was like, oh no, you'll have to read for SWAT 2. And I was like, oh no. wait, what do you mean you're changing my part? What are you doing? And, because yeah, basically SWAT 1 was, the seasoned cop, and SWAT 2 was the younger cop. And so I got in there and she changed, my role, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know any of these lines. What do I do? And I was, kind of really nervous and kind of freaking, maybe not nervous, but just like, oh crap. And, but luckily SWAT 2 didn't really have many lines. It was more, they just kind of wanted the action of things. And so I did it the first time, and I just kind of was like standing there, and it was these really interesting, I don't know, it was like staircase. It was very different to what it turned out to be in the movie. Um, there was like a flaming guy or something. I don't know. It was really crazy. But I just thought it was really bad. I think when anyone auditions for a big movie, especially maybe the very first time, no matter what you do, you're gonna think it's really bad. I mean, you know. And so she was like, okay, let's try it again. And then I was like, hey, can I like pretend I'm holding up a gun? Because the character had a gun, and she was like, yeah, sure, yeah, try that, hold up a gun. And so I was like, yeah, all right, we'll do this again. And so this time I was like, the second time I was pretending to hold up a gun and like doing all this stuff, and I just had that look in my eye and I think that's what it was. I think it was that look in my eye that just like that kind of secured it, because I still feel like the words that were coming out of my mouth weren't necessarily as good as I would have liked them to be. And so, I did that, and she, let me leave after that. I guess she was satisfied, or she was horrified, one of the two. And so I just left, and as I left, I was just like, oh, geez, I bombed that. That was awful. It was terrible. And then I got a call about 2 weeks later, from my agency again, and they were like, hey, so they want you to come in and read for SWAT 1. And I was like, wait, what? I already did that. Oh no. And he was like, oh, you did? All right, hold on. Let me call them real quick. And so in the like 5 minutes that he didn't call me back, I was like, oh, see, they already forgot me. It's over. Like, yeah, darn bummer. Um, and then he called me back, and he was like, hey, they loved you. They want you to come in for a callback. And I was like, what? No way. You're kidding me. And he was like, yeah, the callback will be in front of Zack Snyder, and you're going to have to go to the studio, and you're going to have to turn in your phone, and you have to be checked in, and all this crazy. You have to sign an NDA and all this stuff. It was really crazy. So it was like a week later that the callback was, and the night before, I came down just instantly with this terrible, terrible cold. I mean, it's just one of those colds that just hits you right out. Probably the flu, I don't know, but it just right out of nowhere. It's just a brick wall. And it was just like, no, why? I cannot believe this. And I told my brain, I was like, no, you cannot be sick for this. You will not be sick. When you're done with the audition, you can be sick, but until then, you are not sick. And I drove all the way to the audition, and my name wasn't on the list trying to get into the door, which every single time I showed up to the studio, which wasn't that many times, it was like 4 or 5 times, my name was never on the list. Every time they had to call me in. So I checked in, and I'm just fighting the sickness, just telling myself I'm not sick. And then we got the real lines that we were gonna do, and so it was me and a bunch of other people, and we were just in a room practicing the lines for, I don't know, half an hour, over and over and over. And at one point, this big dog, it was just a giant white dog, just walked up to me, and like was smelling me and maybe smelling my dog. And I started to pet him. I was just like, oh, hey, little guy, what's going on? And then Henry Cavill, who was Superman, walks up, and he just like picked him up, and I was like, oh, hey, sorry. He's like, oh, it's cool. And he just walked out with this. That dog had to have been, 100 pounds or so. He just easily just picked him up and walked out, just like Superman would. um, so then after that, they finally started calling people in, and this is when my nerves really start to kick in. It's I try to use them, use the power of the nerves. Really gets the heart pumping, and so they finally called me up, and you walk up, and it's a studio, and it's basically, you kind of have to imagine like a big giant store that's empty. I don't know if you know what like Walmart is, probably. So if you imagine that just being completely empty, that's what this was. And all the way down at the end, where I could almost just barely see him, was Zack Snyder. And he was sitting at a table, and there was a camera next to him. So I had to walk all the way towards him really slowly, just getting more nerves and more nerves. And I finally reached the table, because I don't know how he's going to be, I mean, if he looks kind of grumpy or something, then I'm just going to have more nerves. But the instant I walked up, he just stood up. He said, "Hi, I'm Zack Snyder." And he shook my hand, and he just instantly, I was not nervous anymore, because he just had all this energy, and he was like, I could tell he wanted me to be there. And it was just great. It was wonderful. And the audition, I felt, went really well. Like I thought it was one of my best auditions ever. It was great. And then when I finished, and he had me do it, well, he had me do it twice. He directed me a little bit, changed some stuff, and I did it again. And I got in my car, and I was like, okay, now you can be sick. And by the time I got home, I was just dead, completely dead. I mean, I had a fever and just bed rest, nothing but bed rest and soup. And the next day, I missed a call from my agent, and I got the email from my agent saying, "You got the part, you booked it." And I was so sick that I was just like, yay. And I went out and told my mom, and she gave me a hug, and it was just, yeah. So that's...
Well, that is a pretty incredible story. Yeah. I could have listened to that for a lot longer, but yeah, well, that's really good. So it was really interesting what you were saying about your first audition, where first of all you did it without miming having a gun, but then the second time it was a lot better, and you mimed holding one. I thought that was really interesting, actually.
Yeah, because it's weird, like it's like casting directors, they don't want you to bring in a bunch of props. I remember one of my acting teachers, he told me a story that, like, one of his very first auditions, he came in and just brought a bunch of props, and and I think he was saying that it was just kind of a mess, and I remember first few of mine, I would bring some stuff, and then I would leave and just feel like that was really awkward and weird, and yeah, so clearly, I'm not going to bring like a prop gun or something, but I just, just holding up the gun, it really helped a lot, just bring the character to life. So I'm glad she like let me do it, because a lot of times, they just want to see your face, a close up, just see what your face is going to do. And to me, I think that's kind of impersonal. I hate auditions. I think I'm not the only actor that will ever say that, or whatever. But auditions they're rough, man.
But as we said, and I'm sure you'll agree, they feel so much more worth it when you do book the role.
Oh, of course. I mean, that's the best feeling in the world, is because they say that as an actor, you're really just a professional auditioner, I mean, you audition so much, and it's just it's the best feeling in the world when you book something and you get to film it and then you get to watch it. It's just fantastic. It's so exhilarating.
The way I see the term professional auditioner is if it is like a doctor taking a non-fancy word and turning it into a fancy word, and then you just don't want to hear it. Yeah, I think we both prefer actor.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah,
And
exactly.
of course,
Exactly.
prior to being cast, were you familiar with DC Comics? Did you read a lot of them?
It was I didn't read a lot of comics growing up. Like I said, I was more of a Spider-Man fan. I wouldn't even say I was like a Marvel fan. Um, but I didn't really get a hold of comics that much. I think what got me into the whole thing really big time was the Dark Knight trilogy. That's really when I really started to take Batman seriously as a character, and just kind of realizing that there's this whole world out there that's just beautiful, you know. And one of my really best friends, he is like the biggest DC fan that I know. I mean, he loves it. So he would always tell me all these stories all the time. His favorite is The Flash. So he would always tell me these fascinating stories about The Flash, and that always sounded so amazing. So I love The Flash now. I love He's great. The TV show is so good. I just recently watched season 1. It was really awesome. Um, but yeah, it wasn't until really I booked the role that I was really like, yeah, you know what, I should really start looking into this stuff. There were a few things that I read here and there, but after I booked the role, I got pretty hardcore. I've read a lot of stuff. I've read every single one in the new 52 that they've done, and a lot of the older things all the time. I've always liked the animated series as a kid, all the movies and stuff. So I've always been a fan. I just never really got my hands on a comic book
Yeah,
until
it's
recently.
very interesting, and it's also interesting that the Dark Knight trilogy had such a big influence on you because it had a big influence on a lot of other people as well.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
So moving
definitely.
on to my next question, you got to be part of a scene with Batman in Batman vs Superman. What was it like seeing the Batman costume from the film up close and personal?
It's got to be one of the top moments of my entire life. I mean, it's terrifying and just amazing to see. And that costume design is incredible, and just up close, it just puts everything into perspective. The first time I saw Ben Affleck, I actually saw him coming out of a trailer, his trailer, and he just looked. I mean, he wasn't dressed as Batman; he was dressed as Bruce Wayne, and he looked so just in character. Just he wasn't even like in scenes or whatever. I mean, like really, he kind of looked like crap, you know. Like, but if you look at Batman versus Superman, that's kind of the Bruce Wayne that he is. He's just kind of down, and he's kind of almost an alcoholic, and he just looked so brooding, and it's just seeing him walk out of his trailer, just the way he was walking and looking, I was just thinking like, oh yeah, he's going to be awesome. This is going to be a lot different than anything we've got before. And, it was. So
Yeah,
it was really
definitely.
nice.
That's a really great way to look at it. So, moving on to my next question, what was the overall experience like working with the cast and crew of Batman vs Superman? Would you like to work with any of them again?
There, yes. I mean, everyone was amazing. We filmed, man, it was like October, so June, July. It was like 6 or 7 months into their shoot, and when we shot, they were on the end of like a month straight of overnight shoots. So usually in that case, I would say everyone's spirits would be really down, and everyone would be drained and whatever. But I didn't get one sense of that. Every single person working was so good and happy and professional and just great to be around, and everyone loved it, and yeah, it just everyone seemed like they were so proud of everything they were doing, and I loved it all. Every single moment of it. The the very first the very first shot that I did, um Well, really, when I was leaving my house, which is kind of weird. I was about like 45 minutes away from set, and that was kind of another interesting thing that everyone there was kind of like, "Hey, where are you from? L.A. Where are you from? L.A. Where are you from? Oh, like an hour that way. Grand Blanc, Michigan. You ever heard of that one? Yeah." So just driving there, I was just like, "Wow, this is it. This is finally it. It's real." And then I would show up to set and I had to park the car and it was just like, wow, this is real. This is finally real. And then I went into my trailer and got in costume and yet again, wow, this is real. It's finally it. And then they called us to set and yet again, this is real. This is finally it. Wow. And yeah, so my very first shot was, and nobody even really even told me that this is what was going to happen, but I walk over there and there's this big giant structure next to me. It's really dark. This is like metal structure that I think they were filming. There was a camera on top of it. Um, and it's kind of dark, so I can't really see much of what's going on, but they're like, I had to lift my arms up and two guys are like putting on my like belt and gun and all that stuff. And to my right are the monitors where like people are watching to see what they're filming, and just a bunch of chairs. And I saw Zack Snyder right here, but it was hard. It was really hard to see because it was dark, and he gave me like a thumbs up, and I wasn't sure if he was looking at me or someone behind me, and so I kind of did one of these like nod things, but I didn't want to like embarrass myself and like say like, "Hey, what's up?" And then he, like in every single romantic comedy where the girl is talking to the guy behind the guy. But he was giving me the thumbs up, so that's good. And first thing was a stunt shot, and they strapped me into a cop car. They put me into a cop car, and there were like 3 straps that go around you, and I'm just like, holy crap, what the hell is going on? And the first shot was that overhead cop car shot when the bats come out of the chimney there, and then you see the cop car slide in. So that was the first shot, and it was incredible because nobody had told me that that's what we were gonna do. So my very first shot on a huge motion picture was me inside of a car with a stuntman driver. It was just amazing, and there was no time to have like nerves or be nervous or anything. It was just, all right, let's do my job. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and it's probably a good thing no one was accompanying you to set, because that would have been a lot of "this is real" moments they would have had to put up with.
Yeah. Actually, there was somebody did. They like walked me all the way to set. So
well, I meant more in the 1 hour car journey to the set instead of the walking to the set.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah. Just picture definitely. Someone in the car with you. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it's really interesting what you were describing. Like no warning whatsoever. You're just immediately put in a car with a stunt driver. Yeah.
Yep, and I wouldn't want it any other
Absolutely.
way. I mean,
and what if it turned out Zack Snyder was actually waving at a girl behind you?
Well, you know what? I played it off really well, so he would have had no
idea.
Okay,
that's a very reasonable answer. Okay. So moving on to my next question, do you have any other funny stories from working on Batman vs Superman that you would like to share?
One in particular that I can remember was my very last day. It was the only day that we were actually at the studio filming. Well, except for one other time, but that was for the photo shoot thing for the newspaper shots there that you see in the movie a bunch of times. But yeah, my very last day, we were at the studio, and I had to go to the bathroom, and So you have to like, I left my trailer and thing, and went in, and you had to put your cell phone in this. There was like a box designed specifically for a bunch of cell phones because nobody was allowed to have cell phones on set. And right when I like opened the door to go to the bathroom, Zack Snyder was peeing, and I was like, oh no. And he looks at me and he's like, oh hey man, how's it going? Like, and I'm like, oh geez, he's talking to me, he's peeing. All right, okay, I'm gonna try to do this. Yeah, no, I'm doing good. Yeah, how are you? Like, oh yeah, I'm real good. And oh, it's your last day today, and I'm like trying to pee, and I just was standing there trying to pee, and I'm just like pee, and he's like, yeah, it's your last day. Yeah, and I was like, yeah, I'm sad. He's like, oh no, you're doing a great job. And he just kept talking, and then eventually, he left, and then I was able to pee.
Yeah. Isn't that just always the case, though? Like, someone tries to talk to you, and then you're like,
Yeah.
it's just one of those things. Some people like how to, concentrate on multiple things at the same time, and some people are just like, if I'm talking to someone, I've got to concentrate on talking to someone, otherwise I'm going to sound like a fool. And yeah, that
Right.
is really
Exactly.
funny, though. Not something I want to picture, but it's funny. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's lucky you can't see me then, because normally I mime the story.
Okay. So my final question for you, Mason, is: do you have any upcoming acting roles or any other projects that you would like to talk about?
I've been doing some. I moved out to New York City again for like the 75th time last year, and I've really been waiting on Batman versus Superman to come out so I could kind of promote myself some more. So I've been doing some short films and things like that. But other than that, there hasn't been too many things that I've been doing. I've kind of just been biding my time, just waiting for this moment, and now I'm kind of waiting for it to come out on DVD and Blu-ray and whatever, so I can make a new reel and like do all these things and go to some agents out in New York and show them all this stuff. So that, yeah, I kind of have a boring answer. There's really nothing too major going on right now, but in the future there will be. I'm sure there will be lots of things coming up. So
yeah, well, this isn't a cartoon, but I'll be sure to do exactly that. So yeah, that's all of my questions for you today, Mason. It's been a pleasure talking to you on the podcast today.
You
You're
as
very
well.
welcome,
Thank
and
you very much
hopefully
for
I
having
can
me.
talk to you again at some point. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
please.
I just had to
Anytime.
create a joke based on with the story you were saying, so I basically put in my live chat Batman versus Superman Dawn of Peen. Yeah, I'm not sure my listeners will approve, but you have to make another joke out of something like that. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, so I'll talk to you again at some point, and it's been a pleasure again, as I said, having you on the show today. So I'll talk to you again soon.
Well,
Take
thank
care. You too. Bye.
Thank you. You too. All right.
So that's it for this week's podcast. Make sure to check out our podcast links, check out our website.everythinggeekpodcast.com/EGP, check out our Facebook page, www.facebook.com/everythinggeekpodcast, check out our YouTube channel, www.youtube.com/user/everythinggeekcast, check us out on Twitter, twitter.com/everythinggeekp. Check us out on Instagram, instagram.com/official everythinggeekpodcast. Check out our Mixcloud profile, www.mixcloud.com/everythinggeekpodcast. Email us at the following email, everythinggeekpodcast@gmail.com. Check out our companion podcast, Everything Geek Comiccast, www.facebook.com/everythinggeekcomiccast. Make sure to check out the hosts' YouTube channels. Mine is www.youtube.com/user/Separatist Check out Mason Heidger's website, masonheidger.com, and check out Channel 138 where we broadcast live from, www.channel138.com. So geeks out, everyone.
I always love that world. I always think that takes you away from your daily life. I think there was very much of a kid approach to things. You want to do things that you don't see every day, and I kept on going that way. So my style
and obviously and shot up the place, and gotten into it with some of the security guys and stolen the kryptonite. So it was just a real dramatic scene, the way that they played it out, and had